So let's see. Okay, we are live. Yes, hello to Cybersecurity Expert Talk. And together I have as well the pleasure to have really a good lineup. It's a great lineup and it's an international lineup. So the topic we're talking today is smart cities. And I said, well, it's like where we are and where we want to go in terms of cybersecurity. And I have the pleasure to welcome three excellent experts. It's Rob Tiffany from Ericsson in Seattle. Hello, Rob.
Hey, how you doing?
It's Giuliano from Naples, cybersecurity expert.
Hi, everyone. Hi, thank you for the invitation.
And Antonio from, let's spell it hopefully right, Murcia.
Murcia, yes.
In Spain. Thank you very much for joining this session. So international lineup, and it's great. We have the practical view from enterprise, the cybersecurity view, and cybersecurity research. And when I talk about smart cities, first of all, let me introduce a little bit about my opinion about smart cities. My opinion is that we have already a lot of cybersecurity mess in the IoT space. And now we see these numbers like devices growing from maybe currently 30 billion, whatever devices, to 130 billion devices the next year. So I think currently industry is failing. And by that, the cybersecurity mess will be expanding to absolutely crazy numbers. But if you talk about smart cities, we talk about public spaces. So we talk about cybersecurity for public spaces, which is to me different to cybersecurities inside companies or smart homes. It's to me something like, oh, this is really, I mean, we are all in lockdown now. Yeah. So imagine a lockdown which is not caused by a biological virus. It's a lockdown caused by a computer virus. I mean, could it be the same situation? So that's my introduction to the topic. And I even just want to start with you, Rob, asking you in terms of cybersecurity. I think we have a life cycle problem even today in smart cities. It's like a lot of cities have a problem to keep their infrastructure on a proper level.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now they're stepping into the smart infrastructure. I mean, how can we manage that?
It's been interesting watching the smart city space over the years as it plays in with IoT and other things. There was certainly lots of excitement around smart city projects many years ago. And I've watched a few things happen over time, lots of great ideas, use cases, but some big problems along the way, aside from security. Certainly old infrastructure all over the cities, old roads, old transportation, train systems, metro systems, buildings. It reminds me a lot of, if I think of all the time I spent kind of in the industrial IoT space, especially when I was at Hitachi, that realization with IoT is, well, people thought it was all going to be new greenfield futuristic projects. And then they realized that if you want to have success in that space, you have to work with old things. And it doesn't seem as fun or exciting to tell you that actually you're going to spend the next 10 or 20 years retrofitting old things. And that was my experience, and that it continues to be my experience in the industrial space, manufacturing, where there's lots of companies with old machines, but the same applies to cities with very, very old infrastructure. It feels like no matter what country you're in, there's always the idea that there's never enough money or budget for new projects, or whenever a mayor of a city or something like that, they have money, it's always to do something cool and new or whatever, and they don't want to spend the money on beefing up or modernizing old things. Just like you see inside companies, like in IT departments, where the IT department has this much budget and they know they should probably try to modernize and help secure old software and technology they have, but that's not cool. They want to do cool new projects. And so old things get left behind. And I think we see that across the board. And so you certainly see it in cities. You know, the technology used, you know, you and I were talking earlier about trains, you know, diesel trains, you know, all kinds of stuff. You know, everybody wants to have a sustainable city, but good luck. There's
to give the audience a chance of the story is that I said I was traveling from San Francisco to, I think, San Jose, and I was using the Caltrain, which is a old-fashioned diesel train from, let me say, the 60s or 70s or whatever. It's the most not smartest train you can imagine, but maybe it's the most resilient type of train in terms of cyber attacks.
That's a good point.
Brings me in terms of Antonio. I know that Murcia, you did a lot of smart city projects in Murcia, and it's a, I mean, it's a small, cozy town, but it's a really innovative place in terms of smart cities. So how do you manage this question about life cycle in Murcia? Oh, you have to unmute.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was, when I was, I mean, I cleared.
With a bad connection, Antonio. Maybe I will just give the question to Giuliano, because in Naples, I think you have a...
No, it's coming up again. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I will just hand over to Giuliano, and then we'll later follow up with you, Antonio. So Giuliano, how is the situation in Naples regarding the smart cities?
Yeah, we have a delay if we think to big city in Europe or in the US. But let me introduce just the basic concept of smart city that we can bring to also to the small medium city that it's a typical city that we have in Italy, because we have three big cities, that is Rome, Milan, and Naples. But it's we have to do a lot. We stay so far to the concept of a smart city that in other country already have. We know that smart city need to increase efficiency in which they operate, and they use their resource. And this major improvement, this major efficiency or the major efficiency improvement can be achieved by the horizontal interconnection between physical system like transportation, water, power grid, waste management, and digital transformation, with its intent to making the citizen lives better, is accelerating this process of transformation of urban centers to the smart city. But in the three layer of smart city, the urbaneers make an extensive use of edge computing, of communication, information technology, digital services, cloud computing, fog computing, and many different devices that like IoT, sensors that collecting a large amount of data and use this data inside to, for example, to bring information from physical world to cyber world. And in this cyber world, we can build, we can create, for example, a digital twin of the physical world, where we can also create the models that can help us to understand the behavior of a physical world. But we know that the smart city of the future must be smart. But the question of the today talks is that will this smart city also be cyber safe? And we know that all of these smart city want to use a fusion of all of these advanced technology as big data, artificial intelligence, robotics. So in the future, I think we also could have transportation by aircraft, for example, that will transport not just for cargo service, but also people. And all these advanced technology, we need to think that all of these endpoint could be a gate for an hacker, for an attack.
Yeah, let me just try to get back to Antonio, because he's doing really practical, I mean, in Murcia, really practical smart city execution since many years. So
and thanks, Mirko. I mean, I think now it could be better. This is also a problem, not only about the direct, but also I mean, the stability of the network these days, I would say. But anyway, just to mention that, I will say, I mean, first, just to indicate that you mentioned Murcia it's innovative city basically on this area of smart city. With the city as such has started many projects during the I would say the last 3 or 4 years. Now there's a big national, I would say, initiative to deploy this smart city platform and services is focused on the end user in that sense. And the good thing here has been that all this work has been in collaboration between the municipality and the university. So in the sense that we can really introduce innovation and new ideas on this concept there. But I would say that one of the most important things that, and link it to what you were talking about, the cybersecurity, is that clearly there's a radically change, I would say, that smart city are introducing on the management of the data in the city as such. And because of that, the creation of more concern about how these data are being collectively used by, in this case, the municipalities or in general, the managers of this smart city platform, and also the need to take into account the impact of the deployment, as already was said, of this new technology in that sense. Because one of the main problems is that we are talking about the lamppost and how the lamppost can have a second life now because of the smart cities, because now we are putting a lot of sensors in the lamppost and they are becoming, I would say, like a new point of access to the infrastructure. But also, as already was said, I mean, these lampposts in some of the cases, they have, I mean, 10, 20, 30 years of old in that sense. They are, I mean, it's an old infrastructure, I would say, in some sense. So you are creating innovation over an old infrastructure that need to be updated in some sense. And this is creating problem, not only because of the impact of introducing the technology there, but also because that reflects a little bit what is happening on the city. You know, you have an infrastructure that in some cases old, or not updated, I would say, in enough way, and at the same time you are putting a lot of pressure over the city in order to increase the functionality, put a lot of sensor, creating, I mean, new now with the edge points of data processing, etc. And this is quite stressing for the city, no? So because at the end you need to design basically the process in a way that you can start, I would say, updating, I would say, the structure of how these data are being managed and how the infrastructure can help with that, but at the same time need to provide, I would say, the path to introduction of this new technology on the city, I would say, in some sense. And for doing that, it is quite important, at least my experience in the city, it is not only on the technology side. So, I mean, I'm mostly a technology, but the first thing that you confront when you go to the city is there's a lot of people already, the staff of the municipality that has totally different, I would say, priorities on their life, I would say, and how to try to engage them so that they can see that really this technology can bring them new possibilities, either in their daily life, in their daily work, if you like, in that sense. So it will help them in that sense. And regarding to this, and just to mention to the cybersecurity, for example, I mean, and to put it in a very specific context, we work with the police in that sense, with the local police and in the city. And you can clearly see these two trends, or these two paths in the city. The young people, the young policemen, basically, that are people that are aware of the technology, that are pushing to introducing of these things because they will help them in the either for the management of the cybercrime, just to make it much more very concrete in the. And I would say old-fashioned people that, I mean, they don't see really, I mean, the how this maybe that all this technology will create, I would say, new issues, new things that they should learn. So they try to relax a little bit how this technology are being incorporated. So this reflects a little bit the issue we were saying, that the all infrastructure that need to be updated, but at the same time, the people, I mean, the staff, if you like, of the municipality that has this also need to be updated in order to take into account this new situation and this aspect. And all this is difficult to manage because I mean, it's our big entities at the end. No? You're talking about 100 or 1,000 of people that you need to manage. I would say on this kind of new content.
And I think, Rob, you have a good. You can easily compare between the US and Europe because you have to travel. You had to travel in the past a lot between Europe and US. But what I just want to, even like Antonio, you said, I think there's a lot about acceptance of technology in terms even of security. Like, can I trust this technology? And then you have, especially for 5G or for all this radio frequency based connection stuff, always the situation that you have to place an antenna somewhere in the city. And I mean, what we see in Germany is that, like, let's take the 5G infrastructure. I think it's not a question about can we spend more gateways and antennas in terms of money. The question is, do we find the right places where people in the cities will accept that additional antennas will be put on top of the roof? And I think if you don't understand what is the advantage of a technology, or if you don't have insights in how it really works, or what is the physical situations, you are getting stuck on rolling out this kind of technologies. What, like in I think, wasn't it in UK that 5G antennas have been burned?
Horrible.
Yeah, horrible, isn't it?
And people have been spreading misinformation around the internet during this COVID crisis, saying that 5G creates the virus or something, and that 5G was on cruise ships and 5G is in Italy and 5G, which is crazy. And so, but you'd be amazed to what people will believe. And obviously we saw people believe it and try to set fire to cell towers and things like that. It's interesting, you're right. The difficulties or as Antonio's talking about, the things that slow you down. You've got all these great ideas. You want to modernize your city. You can do it, but there's that, as we would say in the US, that you have to deal with City Hall, all those employees, all the bureaucracy of people, and many of them don't want to change. And many of them don't understand why they need to do all these cool new things. And they think everything's fine the way they are. Or they have different priorities. They have budgets for other things and they don't want to spend it on your cool new thing. And so 5G is being very different than the last, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Normally you would just be updating the existing cellular towers that are already everywhere for the most part, updating with new technology to go faster and farther and things like that, like we saw with LTE and things like that. But to your point, 5G is very different, and it will face potentially issues when you talk about having multiple, more dense, small cells in urban areas. You know, the way 5G is different, it's I've heard it described as a layer cake with different frequencies. You know, just a crash course on wireless technology. I like the analogy, if you know, you listen to music, you listen to stereo equipment and speakers, you know that your tweeter, your high frequency sound, is very directional. It goes one direction and not very far. Your low frequencies, your woofer, your bass, goes much farther. And then you may have a subwoofer in your house, and you notice that you can put that anywhere you want and the sound goes everywhere. Well, the same concept applies with wireless technology for your phone and for IoT devices. And so there's low band frequencies for 5G and others that, you know, that's below 1 gigahertz that will travel many kilometers in distance, but it won't be as fast. There's mid band, which is like 2.5 gigahertz, or, you know, in that area, which is kind of a sweet spot in the middle, much faster, goes farther. And then to your point, Mirko, is the stuff where we're going to have to build out many more small cell towers, small cells everywhere, is the super high frequency, you know, which people call millimeter wave. And it's extremely fast, faster than you can imagine, but it doesn't go very far. It's like your tweeter on your speaker. And so, and it doesn't penetrate buildings very well either. And so they'll have to build more of those. And this becomes back to an issue of dealing with people in the city and money and priorities, and because it's real estate issues, it's leasing areas. I need to put this here. And so the same things that slow you down in making a street light into a smart street light can also slow you down in deploying all these new small cells to give high speed in a dense city, urban area. So it should be interesting to watch how this plays out.
Yep, indeed. I mean, sorry, and just to mention, because I mean, I was a couple of weeks ago in a meeting with the Eurocities, no, that is you know, a community basically of the different cities in Europe that are discussing different topics, and they were preparing, and regarding exactly this topic, they were preparing like a white paper or memorandum regarding the impact of 5G in the cities. So what they understand are the main challenge that cities are being faced now with the deployment of 5G because of all this aspect that you are just mentioned, because there are some worries about what is the deployment, who is going to own the deployment, how the city should share their infrastructure in order to provide to facilitate this kind of deployment, what the citizens can be aware about this. And regarding specifically this, I mean, there were two issues. One about obviously the radio electro pollution impact that this kind of stuff we have, you know, and but also, I mean, specifically in the area of security or cybersecurity, there were some concern about, not concern, but challenge that need to be taken into account. And this is what it is being tried to highlight in this document about the impact of that 5G can have on the city, in the sense that it's introducing much more new components for the processing of the information, with the impossible impact on leakage, vector attacks, new vector attacks that can appear. I mean, the privacy issues that can be. So because we are moving from a quite centralized world, if you like, to a totally dispersed and distributed scenario, that obviously create much more point of failure at the end on all this process. So this is the kind of, I would say, worries, if you like, that are being considered. How the cities will need to be reacting on this kind of new situation that all this technology will bring in. So they obviously, it's an obvious worry, I would say, that will happen. But I mean, it's
you know, it's funny, the foundations that you need to build a smart city are the same foundations you need to roll out cellular and things like that. It starts with power, electricity. All these things we want to do require more electricity, and we have to think about that. And then the next layer to build a smart city is fiber. Yeah. You have to have fiber optics everywhere, because cellular wireless technology, it's not magic. It's based on fiber underground. And so they're just like Wi-Fi access points. You still have Ethernet in your company's walls. And so it's the same thing. So your smart city has to have this incredible fiber infrastructure for high-speed data going underground before you can build on top of it, right?
It's a a multi-dimensional challenge. It's something like what you said, Antonio. I mean, we are bringing in more devices, more applications, more stakeholders into a smart city ecosystem, which means we are exposing the threat landscape. I mean, that's the result, because you can't get control of all the stakeholders. I mean, this would mean that everybody is doing his job in terms of security and being careful and liable. We see already, it seems to be that the industry is not working like that, the ecosystem. So there will be some which are better and some which are weaken the system. So this is what we see. I mean, at 5G, we had a rather emotional discussion about all the network infrastructure suppliers and stuff in the past. So there's also this kind of meta discussion, which is more political and strategical way. And at least, like you said, Rob, and then we have the infrastructure layer, which is, let's say, below the soil, you know, it's really the cables which needs to be, and even in Germany we have the situation that we are completely poor on, we have slept a long time on fiber infrastructure. It's like Germany was setting on improvement of Cooper infrastructure, which is the typical disruption problem, you know, don't change the technology and stuff like that. So now we are paying the price because we need to spend a lot of money to get all the fiber in the ground.
And so it seems like a common theme. I mean, we talked, it's just another type of infrastructure that is forgotten about or neglected, whether it's not up modern trains or adding more fiber or knowing what people need. And building new cities on top of old cities.
Yes, and this was even like my California experience last time, that I say, well, look, there are all these companies who are building the fancy new world. I mean, like, which are consuming, let's say, 3/4 of the bandwidth currently of the internet and stuff like that, and which are building the smart world and the smart cities. But in reality, you have the gap between public infrastructure and what public infrastructure can do towards secure the infrastructure, keep it alive, and then you have all this tech spirit, and seems to be the gap is getting bigger, I think so. And then I think, like, on an international level, like with Germany, which is, let's say, more powerful country in terms of economy, so we now spend the money on fiber. We have the US, who is good, but then we have, for example, Spain or Italy, which are countries who needs to take more effort maybe on getting on a good level. So like in Italy, Giuliano, I don't know what is the situation with towards infrastructure in Italy with 5G or fiber. So is it good? Do you think you're on a good level for that?
Yeah, our country is more strange because we have a different level of development of infrastructure between north and south, because our country is too long, and the development of infrastructure not follow the same not go to the same velocity. But I know that Milan is just a reality near a smart city, and I know that the development of this technology, 5G, is just at the good point, but also it's about the fiber. In south, the situation is different, and we have to work. We have to develop the infrastructure because as said Rob, 5G need a lot of cells because we have high frequency that need high power, and so also the investment in the development of these our government, our country infrastructure is very high, and this situation of lockdown don't help.
Yes, it's, I mean, like, but Antonio, for Murcia, because I know that you're doing really a lot of stuff in Murcia. So what do you think? What is the bottleneck in Murcia? Is it connectivity, or is the bottleneck something like you need the right, you need to find the right spots for introducing IoT devices or connectivity hotspots? Or
I think, I mean, for the infrastructure, I mean you always need more fiber, as Rob was saying. So I mean this is something that you can never put more and more, and so that's not the issue. I think that actually, I mean, what we are facing when we are making the deployment is that the deployment of the IoT part, I would say, is the most relevant part that we are now facing there. So to consider which technology could be more adequate and could be more helpful for the city in order to increase the number of points of data collection, I would say, in some sense. Normally what happened, and at least in Spain, I think it's in several countries in Europe, is that you know, cities already start to deploy some kind of Wi-Fi for the citizens, in some sense, for the, at least, I mean, I know many cities are doing that. But I mean, you cannot rely on that network in order to introduce, to insert infrastructure, real element of the infrastructure, like could be sensor for measurement or for providing control over different points. So you need to deploy a new infrastructure, that wireless infrastructure, if you like, just for this collection of nodes that you need to introduce. No? So one of the things that we already have discussed and tried to analyze is to understand, for example, which kind of low PAN technologies can be used in that sense. So we have experimented with LoRa, we have considered Sigfox at the beginning. Now we are talking about narrowband IoT with some of the telcos that are able to provide that. Either we get the other day, just to mention, an offer, because I mean, Murcia is quite spread. It's one of the most spread municipality areas in Spain, in that sense. So officially, we go up to the seaside, that is 40 kilometers from here, and up to the mountain, that is another 50 kilometers from here. So basically, we have a quite a far area in there. And either we have the other day an offer to use satellite communication for IoT. So I mean, we'll say okay.
I think if you have looked past weeks in the sky, you have seen the Skylink satellites as a pearl. Yes, it was really visible. Like I could watch it from the garden in the night. There were the Skylink satellites, which brings. I mean, another topic would be satellite hacking which is also interesting. So, but coming back to you and your project, just like, because I know, I mean, we are together in a research project which is called IoT Crawler, and I mean, as you said, you have many assets in the city. You have many data points. And now how you can search in the data in a way which is different from Shodan. So for all the people who don't know Shodan, this is just a crawler which is looking for IoT devices and then try to figure out if there are open ports or open data, and then it's just crawling the data. However, if it's, let's say, privacy,
unaware
stuff. But you try another way of
exactly. This is that's why I was saying. So in this kind of different deployment, I think that was a good convergence with what we are doing in the project in IoT Crawler, because I think one of the objectives of IoT Crawler is that basically you can search for objects that want to be searchable in that sense. So it's not otherwise. It's not that they are open and maybe someone can detect that they are there or not. It's basically totally in the opposite side. So how to embed in the devices, in the IoT, some capabilities that allow them to control whom is trying to get information from them, and if they are able to provide all or partially part of the information that they are able to disclose regarding the information they are getting there. No? and how this can be integrated on a, I would say, broad browser mechanism of discovery, so that we put in place some kind of control system that first allow that the communication should be secure, but at the same time we can control more efficiently how the information is being disclosed and how can access and identify. And what now we are trying in that sense is how to embed, that's why I'm saying that the important part, how to embed this on the technologies and in the device level in order to really test this on a scenario, in big scenario or real scenario, if you like it could be the city in that sense. So that's why we are working for example, solution like also Mirko is involved on this kind of research and work, basically, or innovation regarding how to bootstrap securely, basically, the devices when you make the deployment, and how to securely update, basically, the configuration or either the software of the devices, taking into account two things, basically, that you are using, as we're already talking, technologies, wireless technologies that are normally constrained in some sense. So basically, they don't have a big bandwidth to do that exercise. And secondly, that in some of the cases they are not. I mean, also not only the bandwidth, but also, I mean, the connectivity should be also resilient to different kind of I would say the situation that you can have on this kind of configuration. So we are using, in some sense, as Mirko was saying, the experience of the municipality as a way to first evaluate and investigate what are the best technologies that we can trade into first to the deployment, and secondly, how to increase the security, I would say, of all the processor from the bootstrap, the typical life cycle of the devices, in that sense that is bootstrapping, commissioning, and operational part. So basically, what you do when you take out of the box the sensor in order to connect it, how to connect it in some sense to your infrastructure, and third, how once it is connected and is starting to share data, how this data could be done in a way, in a controlled way, if you like, taking into account security and privacy issues. And just to mention, just to indicate that the difference from what, I mean, the technology can provide and what really happened is that either in the Murcia city, we identified that there were some kind of device already available on the city that, I mean, the city personnel already put it there, where basically it happened that the security was based on what already come from the manufacturer. So the typical login password, admin and admin, if you like, in that sense. So I mean, this is what, just to mention again, the difference between what is the level of improvement that you need from the normal situation to what will be expected for the city in some sense.
It's surprising, and I think in the US now we have, isn't it the California cybersecurity bill,
right,
where normally it should not happen that you can install an IoT device running with the factory settings,
right.
or
right. It does always feel like, and you guys may disagree, that in that all the components that make up an IoT solution, the device always seems to be the weak link in the chain, always. It doesn't mean that something else won't be a weak link, but and yeah, you're right, whether it's default passwords. I remember just simple decisions. So when I was at Microsoft and we were designing Azure IoT, just a simple principle was devices are going to be outbound only as far as connectivity. There's no such thing as a device that'll ever be listening. Because I've seen stupid people basically have devices listening. It's almost like they put a web server on a device saying, come hack me.
Exactly.
And so
I open and free for access.
yes, but but that's an engineering problem, because if you look at how IoT devices are built, then it's often not that this. I mean, this is often made by classical engineering, which was non-connected device manufacturing before. So all what they say is, look, we have a controller on our machine or unit and whatever. This was never connected. Okay, so it has all these old protocols to add on with no security. And then someone says, look, what do we need to send the data to the cloud? We need a wireless or a 3G or whatever gateway connector. Just put it connected to our controller. And what do we do? Oh, we buy this whole module from a vendor, which will be, at least for wireless LAN, it will be a Chinese vendor. And believe me, I think the most people are not watching what kind of Linux stack is running on that wireless module. I mean, it's completely server. So what is the configuration? I mean, in terms of large enterprises, they take really care about the supply chain and the suppliers and what is the software. But everything which is going to mid-size and below, I think they can't do that.
Yeah,
right.
but also I think it's a problem of the democratization, if you like, of the IoT. If I mean, in the sense that who is able to buy an IoT and put it and connect it to his network? Mostly everyone. I mean,
yeah, it's cheap.
It's cheap. It's simple. Good. I would say. I mean, so the problem is that they are really not aware of any security conditions in that sense. So I mean, they say, okay, it's something simple. I buy it here in the shop in the corner. I just take it out. I put it here, and I start sending data to the rest of the world. Yeah, but I mean, but that has an implication in the sense, and the problem is that there's a gap. I would say between what we were saying about what is the security impact of doing that in relation to the easy to be done, if you like, in that sense. So no one is going, and normally people are not going to share their mobile to a person that he don't know, but they don't care maybe about putting a sensor on his roof and putting that information available about his buildings. I'm saying so. It's just a matter of the change in the paradigm, basically, of how this can be done, but also the easy way that this also can create new threats and new kind of attacks. And this is something that needs to be, I would say, trained, if you like, to the people in some sense. No, I mean,
one idea which is a little bit more, let's say, a provocation now. If we think about, like, there's a smart city and there are millions of devices deployed in a smart city, because everything will be censored. So easily millions of devices, and we don't know all the players who are deploying it. And some take rather care on cybersecurity, and a lot of them, maybe the majority, has no clue of cybersecurity. Do we need a proactive action to turn off unsecure devices in this kind of networks?
Wow.
Yeah.
You don't need to say yes, but what do you think about it? I mean, is this the consequence of that?
The device police.
Yes, do we need a device police?
Maybe.
I mean, I would say, I mean, maybe not to shut down, but in some sense to make people to do it in the way that you can make the people aware about what is happening there, in the sense. So when you show someone the consequence of putting an open port of think about the video camera, in that sense, that is around your environment, and see that this is being seen by everyone everywhere, and this can try to use it later in a kind of incident to you. In that case, they get aware. The problem is that people is mostly not aware of the impact of this kind of information. That's what I'm saying about the impact of putting these sensors around there and the information that they want. And so making something, in some sense, examples about what is, and showing them that trying to detect some of the situation and present them in front of the consequence, I think should be an obligation in some sense of the sector in some sense. No? So that's I think it's important.
I mean, I see it like more like a living body. I mean, if you take like biological, like let's say a city is something like a living body then, or a network. I mean, even if you look at our immune system, it has two strategies, isn't it? One strategy is protecting. I mean, getting protection. And the second one is a more aggressive way of defending malicious elements or even like cells of their own body if they are not behaving like they should. I mean, isn't that the consequence that we need to be more proactive, like shooting down the IoT device from the roof?
Yeah. So just to mention, from your understanding, the COVID is also a good thing in some sense?
No, it's no. I would never say that something like that is no. It's a
no. I mean,
it's not good. That's not a question. No, something what we see is, of course, like No, what it shows us all that we are vulnerable.
This is the point.
This is the point.
This
it
is the point. When I'm saying good in that sense, so that we should learn something about the situation, because we don't. I mean, we were not protecting ourselves regarding it. So in a good, I would say in the most adequate way. And as a consequence, we have this, and now we need to react. So in some way, that's what I'm saying. No, in some sense, is what you are saying. So we need how to create this awareness of the people about this situation, and there are different ways.
As we have seen for smart cities, I mean, last year it was even in the US. I mean, how many cities have been ransomed by cyber criminals? I mean, there had been a lot of stories, and of course, officially everybody say don't pay, but to be honest, if you ask people, most of them have paid, and they got more stress because they don't know how to organize all the Bitcoins for the payment. I mean,
right.
So, I mean, and this was not the level of IoT. I think this was the level of regular IT infrastructure.
Yes, exactly.
So imagine, I mean, all this brilliant IoT city fancy stuff when you can ransom your, let's say, public transport, because you're not doing ransomware in terms that you encrypt the data. You're doing ransomware in terms that you interfere the system to send wrong data, which will force the digital twin to do some strange stuff, which will force two trains to run on the same track in opposite direction or whatever. I mean, there are horrible ideas you can do with IoT, which is not secured on a sensor level. I mean, that's the point.
I guess that's also why when we think about antibodies attacking bad things and reacting in your own system, there's lots of people, and I'm sure you're probably one of them, Mirko, believes that you really have to have device management on your IoT devices, because they're only secure at a point in time. Moving forward, you no longer know if they're secure anymore, because things change and 0-day things happen. And so back to your IoT police, smart city police, part of it, it's I know these devices, I can fix this problem by updating firmware or security patch, but in some cases maybe it's not fixable and I need to block this one or something like that, to protect everybody else, because you're right, it's a much bigger deal in a smart city if the entire traffic, the lights and the trains and everything are moving and they're all online and they're all connected. That's much more dangerous to have that stuff hacked. And so you have to have that awareness, not only to see those things coming, but to mitigate them in almost in an automated fashion. IoT is getting so big, humans aren't going to be able to manage this stuff. The early days of IoT, people are looking at web dashboards and making decisions, but the real future is the whole thing has to be fully automated, and you won't be looking at anything.
Exactly. You only need to look at the exceptions. That's I think the point.
But I absolutely agree with that. But for that also, I think that more and more. I mean, two things. First, I don't want, because maybe the audience can get worried about all the things that we are saying, because basically we're saying that everything is could be hacked and we can create a lot of chaos and so on. So it is not like that really. But I mean, it should be. We should be carefully manage that stuff. But just to mention that in order to really go in the right, for example, in Europe, this exercise that is being done at different levels in order to try to do like a certification or labeling, if you like, of the IoT, I think goes a little bit in the right direction. So at the end, the main problem is that up to now, as we were saying, people are taking devices that are coming from nowhere. I don't care where they come, without any kind of control and any kind of verification, and they put them directly there in the internet, and then starting from there, they are just pushing data basically in some sense. And the main problem now is that you have no guarantee, as you were saying, about that this device will be fixable if they have any kind of vulnerability, because maybe the company that makes them will never exist again or something like that. And so there's a need to create some kind of trust and confidence on the devices of the IoT, not only for the city, I would say for home, for hospitals, for anything, so a place where basically you can have some kind of guarantee that this device will be has been validated, has passed over some kind of test, and maybe that in the future it will be certified if necessary, if things are changing or not. And because when you buy at home a white good, normally you now go and look which is the manufacturer and which is the label of the white goods. You don't just take any one that is on the market and bring it to your home. So how to create that change in mind so that we can use some kind of trust on the device through a certification or through any other means, basically, I think would be fundamental in order to really make people more confident and less, I would say, paranoid about the impact of the IoT on their life and in the cities, basically.
And this is a good point. And just let me, like what Rob said and you said, I can bring it together in what we are thinking and what we are currently building, because we think like, of course, you can say one part of the problem is how to bring in, let's say, device management and update and patches to the IoT. Okay, checked. We can do that. But at the end, it's about trust, because if we step in this fully automated IoT world, it means that currently we're talking about that humans have to trust devices. Okay, that's one part of the story. But the second part of the story will be that machines have to trust machines. So devices have to trust devices. So if I'm in a dynamic world and let's say I'm an autonomous car, I'm a car driving in the smart city, I need to connect to the traffic light to get the information. So I need to connect to another car. These are dynamic networks where we have to interchange data. And this means we need dynamic trust layers, which is, and then you can ask, what is trust? Trust is something like, we have to negotiate it between the parties.
Exactly. Yeah.
And this is, I think, like this, the world we're stepping in. I mean, we have talked a lot about trust between humans and machines, but we are talking about a world where machines need to trust machines.
Yeah,
that's a great point.
Yeah, indeed. I mean that there's this also this work at least now is more on the scientific area, but it's going to become, I think, more and more important in the future. Is what is the social IoT? No, so IoT at the end will be a virtualization entity that will start interacting with others, and they will create their own social relations that will mimic or not the social relation that we have the human that are on behalf of them. No, so you will create like a total parallel world where things are going to have their own I would say connections, relations, friendship, etc. That maybe they will not replicate what is happening on the physical world in that sense. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, and let's imagine machines are shooting unsecure IoT devices from the roof, which will be the, because if we talk about the police, we talk about the drones, so doing the job. Now, gentlemen, it was even we are almost at the end, so I will give you each of you just the opportunity to make a little bit like, because the storyline here was where we are and where we go in terms of cybersecurity for smart cities. I want to give each of you just the possibility to make a short message or statement from his viewpoint, where we are and where we go. And let's start with Rob.
Well, I think where we are is a big mess right now. Lots of great ideas, lots of things that we all want to do, lots of good intentions, but it's very chaotic. We've got devices that come from all over the place. We don't even know if we can trust those devices, even if they weren't listening. There's the notion of, device attestation or whatever. Am I really who I say I am? And so there's so many things that we have to do to get to where we want to go. And it's all about modernizing infrastructure, power, fiber, connectivity, devices, making sure that devices are updatable and that can be secured over the air. Having something like more fiber, and one of the other features of 5G that people don't talk about is it adds an extra like 100x capacity, which is what we need for IoT to work actually in a smart city, because you'd have a bottleneck. And so having that extra capacity in the wireless level and at the fiber level is all going to be necessary to have, as you said, Mirko, millions of devices in a city, making the city into a living organism. And trust at so many levels, because you're right. We're going to go from trusting the device to trusting some AI system that's managing everything on our behalf. And we have to trust that. And cars have to trust each other. It's going to be crazy. It's going to take a lot of work on all our parts, but it sounds like a fun challenge.
Okay, a fun challenge. So, Giuliano, what do you think? Where we are, where we go?
Yeah. As the smart city grow and become smart, we need to have more cybersecurity awareness, and so we, as an expert and consultant in this field, we need to we must to intensify the awareness program regarding data protection and security by default, but also as a user of this amount of technologies, we must expect that this technology that we are using are designed, deployed, manufactured with the same strategy. I think that we in the future we have to we use it to think to but smart city as our bank, and we need to have care as much as security measure as possible.
But a bank is a good point, because a bank is also about trust, you know. So
yeah.
Antonio, what do you think? Where we are, where we go?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, as I already was saying, I would like to be more positive, not positive, but more, I was at the trustable on the future of all the solution I was said that we are having. I think that, as already was said, we are in a situation now that we are changing cities. I mean, specifically because of the IoT, that the cities are going to clearly is going to change their behavior. They will have much more new functionality. They will really can be a good and a nice I would say place to the people, to help what people need, etc. So I think that we have a very good challenge that we can have a new opportunity, more than a challenge, opportunity, because of the introduction of these new technologies, 5G, I mean IoT, I mean all these mechanisms that make more easy the interaction with the city. But at the same time, it's quite important that in this process, where we are now, we take into account, as we were saying, I mean, seriously the impact of how this technology are going to affect basically the security, and how to design the city in a secure way, I would say, on this transformation. So we are creating new infrastructure, because at the end, the IoT and the use of the IoT in the smart cities is a totally new infrastructure that is going to be deployed. And we need to take in the same way that for the others, for water, for electricity, for mobility, several actions have been taken in order to make secure for the citizen this infrastructure. Now we need to do that also for the IoT and in the smart city. And for that, we need to clearly include or take into account solutions and ideas like, for example, the one that we just mentioned that we are doing in IoT Crawler, the one that we are working in other projects, where basically we are trying to leverage these solutions that already are available in security and for IoT in a broad scale, and that can really cope with this kind of a scenario that we are envisioning for the city, to make searchable the IoTs, to make easily to access to the data that they are providing, etc., and to control who can access that devices. All of this needs to be part of the definition of the infrastructure and the solution that needs to be provided in the smart city environment, I would say.
Yes, it's awesome, and even like I'm doing a talk, a rather brilliant talk. It must be a brilliant talk about IoT fails, which is a horrible talk but rather funny. So, and it's always after the lecture or the talk, people are coming to me and they're sharing their IoT experience. And once time, someone was coming from the audience said to me, yeah, that's a clever talk. You're bringing fear. You're talking about fear, and then you're selling your product. I said, stop. I mean, what we are doing is, I am a tech guy, but I'm a human too, and I'm a father. I'm a family father. I have a daughter which is 12 years old. And if we come to smart city and cybersecurity, all what we are doing is, I want that my daughter has the ability to grow up in a world which is safe and secure, not only in a physical way, but also in a cyber way. This is really a mission. That's the mission why we are building, for example, this patch and update and management stuff for the IoT and the trust. This is not only about business. This is really about taking care of our own future. And I think this is really like what should move the industry. So we have talked a lot about horrible things now, shooting IoT devices. Come on. But I think we have brilliant, I mean, there are brilliant people out there. We have brilliant solutions out there. All what we need to do is to implement it. Gentlemen, it was an exciting hour. I'm always surprised how this time passes by. It was, I think, rather good insights. Thank you very much for joining. For everybody in the audience who likes the Cybersecurity Talk, just subscribe to the YouTube channel, and then you get informed for the next talk, which will be in 2 weeks. I say thank you very much to everybody in the audience and to you guys for joining this talk. It was exciting. Thanks.
Thanks to you. Thanks to all the audience.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So,
Did it work?
yes, it works.